The Imperial ship Everlight cut through the darkness between stars, its gleaming hull catching distant starlight as it approached the coordinates. Emperor Thellius IX stood at the observation deck, his aged frame supported by an exoskeleton that compensated for the weakness of his failing body. His silver eyes, cybernetically enhanced decades ago, focused on the unremarkable star ahead. A G-type main sequence star, yellow-white and ordinary among billions of similar celestial bodies scattered throughout the Andromeda Milky Way coalition. Yet to Thellius, it was anything but ordinary. "Your Luminance, we have arrived at the target system," announced First Navigator Kell, her scaled hands manipulating the holographic controls with practiced precision. Preliminary scans show 8 planets, with the third one from the star showing atmospheric composition consistent with the ancient records. Thellius nodded, suppressing a cough that threatened to rack his frail body. The medical nanites in his bloodstream worked overtime, but even the most advanced technology in the coalition couldn't halt the genetic degradation syndrome that afflicted him. 6 months, the Imperial physicians had given him. 6 months before even the nanites would fail to keep him alive. 6 months to complete the quest that had consumed the last 30 years of his 3-century lifespan. "Bring us into orbit around the third planet," he commanded, his voice still carrying the authority that had ruled over 10,000 worlds for nearly a century. "And prepare my shuttle." High Admiral Vorax stepped forward, the decorations on his military uniform glinting under the soft light of the bridge. "Your Luminance, with all due respect, I must insist on sending a reconnaissance team first. The radiation levels on the surface are concerning, and there are traces of artificial structures that could indicate defensive systems." Thellius turned to face his most loyal officer, a smile creasing his ancient face. "And who would you send, Vorax? Who among our expedition would recognize what we are looking for better than I would?" "Sir, you have studied the records for decades, but nothing—" Thellius cut him off gently. "This is my final expedition, old friend. We both know I won't return to the Citadel. The physicians have been quite clear about that." Vorax's expression softened, his mandibles clicking in a subtle pattern that indicated remorse in a species. "All the more reason to protect you, your Luminance. I appreciate your concern, truly. But this—" Thellius gestured toward the blue-green world now visible on the main view screen. "This has been my life's work. I will not experience it through proxy reports and sensor readings." He turned to the rest of the bridge crew, representatives of a dozen different species that form the core of the coalition. "I will take a small team. High Admiral Vorax, Minister Athissa, and Dr. Lon will accompany me. We will maintain constant communication, and at the first sign of danger, we will return to the Everlight." The decision made, Thellius left the bridge, moving with deliberate steps toward the shuttle bay. The exoskeleton responded to his neural commands, compensating for the weakness in his muscles. As he walked, memories flooded back, fragments of ancient texts, mysterious artifacts, and contradictory legends about the species that had once dominated this region of space, humans. The enigma that had obsessed him since his youth. Minister Athissa adjusted the environmental controls of her suit as the Imperial shuttle broke through the planet's cloud cover. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence, processing the landscape below. "This was supposed to be their homeworld?" she asked, skepticism evident in her voice. "It looks abandoned." Through the viewport, they could see vast ruins stretching across the continent below. Cities that once housed millions now stood empty, reclaimed by vegetation and time. Great structures of metal and concrete had collapsed or stood like skeletal monuments to a civilization long gone. "Something happened here," Dr. Lon murmured, his sensor array collecting data at a furious pace. The small, avian scientist twitched with excitement. Radiation signatures indicate a series of nuclear detonations, but they are old, thousands of years old at minimum. "So they destroyed themselves," Vorax concluded grimly. "Like so many species do when they discover how to split the atom." Thellius shook his head. "The legends say otherwise. The humans didn't die out, they left." The shuttle continued its descent, eventually settling in what appeared to be an ancient plaza surrounded by the remains of monumental buildings. The environmental scans showed an atmosphere technically breathable but contaminated with various pollutants and radiation, necessitating their sealed suits. As they disembarked, Thellius felt a strange sensation, a connection to this place that transcended rational explanation. He'd visited thousands of worlds during his reign, from gas giants with floating cities to water worlds where civilization existed in the depths. Yet standing here, on soil that might once have supported the mythical humans, filled him with an almost religious awe. "Spread out," he ordered. "Look for any preserved data systems, artifacts, or inscriptions. Anything that might tell us what happened here." For hours, they searched through the ruins, finding little beyond deteriorated structures and the occasional preserved item that hinted at the daily life of the planet's former inhabitants. A device that Dr. Lon identified as a primitive entertainment system. Containers made of synthetic material that had somehow withstood millennia of exposure. Small personal transportation vehicles, their engines long since decayed to uselessness. It was Aisha who made the discovery, calling them with excitement to a structure that had been partially preserved by being built into the side of a mountain. "Your luminance. This facility appears to have been shielded against radiation. There are power signatures, faint but present." Thellius hurried as fast as his exoskeleton would allow, following Aisha through a massive doorway designed to withstand catastrophic conditions. Inside, emergency lighting still functioned, drawing power from what must have been an incredibly durable energy source. "Remarkable," breathed Dr. Lon, scanning the interior. "This appears to be some sort of archive or preservation facility." The space was vast, filled with row upon row of storage units. Most had failed over the millennia, but some still maintained integrity. Thellius moved to a central console, where symbols were displayed on a screen that remarkably still functioned. "Can you decipher it?" Vorax asked, looking at the strange angular symbols. Doctor Lon hesitated. "Given time, perhaps. It bears similarities to some of the fragments we have discovered elsewhere, but a complete translation could take—" "I can read it," Thellius interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper. The others turned to him in shock. "Your luminance?" Aisha questioned. Thellius stepped forward, his eyes scanning the symbols with growing certainty. "In my collection, I have artifacts, books, data crystals, fragments of their language. I have studied them my entire life." His fingers, withered with age but still precise, moved across the console, activating sequences that shouldn't have been possible for someone encountering the system for the first time. "This is a message," he explained, his voice growing stronger with excitement. "Left by the last humans on this world. Earth, they called it. Before they departed." The screen changed, and a recording began to play. The image was degraded, the colors shifted, but still discernible. A being, bipedal, with features not entirely unlike some of the humanoid species of the Coalition. But there was something distinctive about it, something that marked it as different from any known species. The being spoke, and though the audio was corrupted, fragments came through clearly enough for Thellius to translate for his companions. Final message from Earth Command. The Exodus ships have cleared the solar system. Estimated population aboard, 11.2 billion. All continental shelters now empty. This facility will maintain automated systems until power failure, estimated at 10,000 standard years. To whoever finds this record, humanity has not perished. We have. The recording skipped, damaged by time. The 9 arcs will establish colonies in the following systems. Coordinates encrypted in this message. May our descendants remember Earth, though we may never return. More corruption, then. The great mistake was ours, but so too is our survival. We adapt. We endure. We continue. The recording ended, leaving the 4 of them in silence, broken only by the hum of ancient machinery. "They left," Vorax said eventually. "But why? What was this great mistake?" Dr. Lon was already analyzing other data from the facility. According to these records, there was a catastrophic climate shift approximately 15,000 years ago, combined with limited nuclear exchanges between their nations. But that doesn't explain a total planetary evacuation. The world would have remained habitable in many regions. Thellius moved deeper into the facility, drawn by an instinct he couldn't explain. The others followed, their suit lights illuminating the path ahead. They passed through chambers containing preserved specimens of Earth life. Plants, small animals, even microorganisms, all maintained in stasis fields that had somehow continued functioning through the millennia. Finally, they reached a secure door at the facility's heart. Unlike the other systems, this one required more than just knowledge of the language. It needed genetic authentication. It's asking for human DNA, Thellius explained, examining the security system. Well, that's the end of our exploration, Vorix stated pragmatically. Unless your collection of artifacts happens to include human genetic material. Thellius smiled enigmatically. As a matter of fact, he reached into a compartment on his exoskeleton and withdrew a small case. Opening it revealed a simple metal cylinder, unadorned except for symbols etched into its surface. "What is that?" Athissa asked. "A preservation capsule, discovered in the ruins of a human outpost on a moon of the gas giant in this system. Inside is a biological sample, blood, I believe, sealed away by the last human to leave that station." Before anyone could object, Thellius had extracted a minute sample from the cylinder and placed it on the scanner. The system hummed, analyzed, and then the door slid open with a hiss of escaping air. The chamber beyond was small compared to the others, but what it contained made them all stand in mute astonishment. A single stasis pod occupied the center, and within it, perfectly preserved, was a human. Impossible, whispered Vorix. Incredible, countered Dr. Lon, already scanning the pod. This stasis technology is beyond anything we possess, even now. The cellular degradation is minimal despite the passage of 15,000 years. Thellius approached the pod reverently. Inside was a female human, her skin a rich brown, her features composed in what appeared to be peaceful sleep. Attached to the pod was another data console, which Thellius quickly accessed. Her name was Dr. Aisha Washington, he translated, Chief Archivist of Earth Command. She volunteered to remain behind, to safeguard humanity's knowledge and genetic legacy. Pod was programmed to maintain her in stasis until... He paused, reading further, his expression shifting to one of profound wonder. "Until what, your luminance?" Athissa prompted. "Until another spacefaring civilization discovered this facility," Thellius finished. They expected, to be found someday. Dr. Lon's wings fluttered in excitement. "Is she viable? Could she be revived?" Thellius studied the pod's readouts. According to this, yes. The system was designed for eventual revival. But, he hesitated, the process appears complex, requiring specific protocols. "Your luminance," Vorix interjected gravely. "I must advise caution. We know nothing about this species beyond legends and fragments. Reviving this individual could pose unknown risks. Or, Athissa countered, it could provide answers to questions that have puzzled scholars for millennia. The opportunity to speak with an actual human. The implications for historical research alone are staggering." Thellius remained silent, considering. Throughout his long life, through wars and peace, through the expansion of the coalition and the challenges of ruling thousands of diverse worlds, he had always been guided by curiosity, the desire to understand, to learn, to discover. It was what had first drawn him to the mystery of humanity. And now, at the end of his life, he stood before the threshold of discovery. "We will revive her," he decided finally. "But we will take every precaution. Prepare a medical quarantine on the Everlight. I want our best xenobiologists and physicians standing by. We will transport the pod there intact." The revival process took 3 days. Thellius refused to leave the medical bay during that time, watching as the stasis pod was carefully integrated with the Everlight systems. Dr. Lon worked tirelessly alongside the Imperial medical team, deciphering the pod's instructions and adapting coalition technology to interface with the ancient human systems. "It's remarkable," Dr. Lon told him during a brief rest period. Their technology was primitive in many ways, crude propulsion systems, limited AI capabilities, rudimentary genetic engineering. But in other areas, like this stasis technology, they were inspired, innovative in ways we wouldn't have conceived. Different evolutionary paths lead to different technological priorities, Thellius observed. It's why the coalition functions. Each species contributes unique perspectives. On the 3rd day, the final revival sequence began. The pod's internal chemistry shifted, administering compounds to the human system that would reverse the stasis effect. Her vital signs, alien but increasingly understood by the medical team, began to strengthen. Thellius dismissed everyone except Dr. Lon and the chief medical officer, a Tellurian named Dr. Sedva, whose species' empathic abilities would help gauge the human's emotional state upon awakening. The pod opened with a soft hiss. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, the human's eyes opened, dark brown, alert, and immediately focused on the three alien beings before her. There was no fear in those eyes, only intense curiosity. She spoke, her voice hoarse from disuse but clear. The words were incomprehensible to Dr. Lon and Dr. Sedva, but Thellius understood. "You are not human," she said in her language, which means either the evacuation was unnecessary or we have been gone a very long time. Thellius replied in the same tongue, his pronunciation careful. "Dr. Washington, my name is Emperor Thellius IX of the Andromeda Milky Way Coalition. You have been in stasis for approximately 15,000 years." She absorbed this information with remarkable composure, then asked, "Did any of the Ark survive? Did humanity survive?" It was the question Thellius had anticipated, and the one he couldn't answer with certainty. "We don't know," he admitted. "Until now, humans were considered a semi-mythical species from the distant past. There are artifacts, ruins, fragments of your civilization scattered across hundreds of worlds, but no living humans have been encountered by any coalition species." Dr. Washington closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. "I need to see your star charts." The Ark destinations were encoded in the facility's database. "Did you recover that data?" "We did," Thellius confirmed. "Dr. Lon has been analyzing it, but the encryption is complex." "I can decode it," she said, attempting to sit up. Dr. Sedva moved to assist her, communicating through gestures since they shared no common language. "You should rest first," Thellius advised. "Your body needs time to fully recover from stasis." "With respect, Emperor," she replied with a hint of steel in her voice, "I have rested for 15 millennia. I was left behind for one purpose: to ensure humanity's legacy continued. I need to know if we succeeded." Thellius recognized the determination in her eyes. It mirrored his own lifelong quest to uncover the truth about humanity. He nodded to Dr. Lon, who brought forward a data terminal. "This system has been adapted to interface with your facility's data," Thellius explained. Dr. Lon is a xenoarchaeologist who specializes in ancient technologies. Dr. Washington studied the alien technology briefly, then began to work with surprising adaptability. Her fingers moved across the interface, occasionally pausing to decipher the coalition's symbolic language, but quickly developing a working understanding. "Your species learns quickly," Thellius observed. "Necessity," she replied without looking up. "It's how we survived as long as we did. It's how we built the arcs when we realized Earth was dying faster than we could save it." After an hour of work, she had decoded the coordinates for the 9 human Ark ships. Thellius had the data transferred to the Everlight's navigation system, overlaying it with the current coalition star charts. The results were projected as a hologram above her bed. 9 trajectories, stretching outward from the Sol system toward distant stars. "These were the destinations," she said, her voice softening. 9 habitable worlds, the best candidates from our surveys. Each ark carried over 1 billion people, along with the genetic material of thousands of Earth species, cultural archives, and technology. Thellius studied the trajectories with growing excitement. 3 of these worlds are currently inhabited by coalition species, he noted, but they were colonized less than 5,000 years ago, and no human ruins were reported. And the others? 4 are within coalition space, but classified as uninhabitable, extreme conditions that would require significant terraforming. 2 are beyond our current borders, in unexplored regions. Dr. Washington's expression tightened. The arcs had terraforming capabilities. If they reached the destinations, they should have been able to adapt even challenging environments. A silence fell over the medical bay as they contemplated the implications. 6 potential destinations where humanity might have established itself, might have survived and evolved over 15 millennia. "We need to check them all," Dr. Washington said finally, starting with the 2 unexplored systems. If the other targets proved unsuitable, those would have been the contingency destinations. Thellius nodded slowly. "We will. I give you my word. But first, there is much you should know about the galaxy as it exists now. The coalition encompasses over 10,000 worlds and 37 sentient species. We have achieved a relative peace after centuries of conflict. And where do humans fit into this coalition? She asked directly. That, Thellius said with a slight smile, is what we are going to find out. The journey to the first unexplored system took 3 weeks, even with the Everlight's advanced propulsion systems. During that time, Dr. Washington, Aisha, as she asked to be called, immersed herself in learning about the coalition. Her capacity for absorbing information astounded even the most brilliant minds aboard the Imperial vessel. Within days, she had mastered the coalition's common language, a synthetic construct designed to be pronounceable by most member species. By the end of the first week, she had begun studying the biological and cultural profiles of the major coalition species. By the second week, she was engaged in discussions with the ship's scientists about comparative technological development. Thellius spent hours each day with her, answering her questions and asking his own. He shared his collection of human artifacts gathered over decades, watching with pleasure as she confirmed or corrected his theories about their purpose and significance. "You have dedicated much of your life to studying us," she observed during one such session. "Why? What drew you to humanity specifically?" Thellius considered the question carefully. "When I was young, barely 50 years old, I visited a remote world near what you call the Orion Arm. There, in ruins much older than the local civilization, I found a preserved data crystal containing text in a language no one recognized. It took years to develop even a partial translation, but what emerged was extraordinary." "What did it say?" Aisha asked. "It was a story," Thellius replied, his eyes distant with memory. "A fictional narrative about humans venturing to the stars, facing impossible odds, and not merely surviving, but triumphing through innovation, cooperation, and sheer determination. The characters faced extinction-level threats and overcame them not through superior strength or advanced technology, but through what the text called the indomitable human spirit." He paused, then continued more softly. "It captured my imagination, the idea that a species could face the void with such audacity. In a coalition, progress has always been methodical, careful. But humans, if the stories were true, hurled themselves at the unknown with a uniquely reckless courage." Aisha smiled, a gesture Thellius had come to recognize as indicating both amusement and affirmation. "That sounds like us. Earth history is full of examples. Explorers setting out with primitive vessels across vast oceans, settlers crossing hostile continents with minimal supplies, astronauts venturing into space in what were essentially metal cans propelled by controlled explosions. Precisely the quality that must have enabled you to build and launch 9 arcs when faced with planetary extinction," Thellius noted. "Quality I have tried to foster in the coalition during my reign." Their conversation was interrupted by a communication from the bridge. They had arrived at the first target system. The star was a K-type orange dwarf, smaller and cooler than Sol, but stable and long-lived. Initial scans showed 7 planets, with the 4th one, a super-Earth approximately 1.5 times the size of humanity's homeworld, showing signs of an oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. "Life-bearing," confirmed Dr. Lon as the data came in. And he hesitated, checking the readings again. "There are artificial structures, extensive ones." Aisha gripped the railing of the observation deck, her expression tense with hope and apprehension. "Population centers?" "Difficult to determine from orbit," Dr. Lon replied. "The structures appear to be primarily equatorial, with significant concentration on the largest continent. But there's something unusual about the pattern. It's too regular, too geometric." The Everlight moved into a stable orbit, deploying sensor drones to gather more detailed information. When the first visual feeds came through, the bridge fell silent. The planet's surface was covered with vast geometric patterns of structures, but they showed no signs of current habitation. No movement, no energy signatures, no communication emissions. Just immense, empty complexes stretching across thousands of square kilometers. "They were here," Aisha whispered. This is human architecture. Those are arcology designs, self-contained city structures we were developing before the evacuation." Thellius studied the images, noting the precision of the layouts, the interconnected nature of the structures. "But where are they now?" There's no evidence of destruction or conflict. We need to go down there, Aisha insisted. There will be records, data storage, something to tell us what happened. Unlike Earth, this planet's atmosphere was safe to breathe, and radiation levels were within normal parameters. A larger expedition team was assembled, including specialists in archaeology, biology, and engineering, along with Thellius, Aisha, Vorix, and Dr. Lon. They landed near the largest complex, a sprawling structure that rose in terrace levels nearly a kilometer high. Up close, the architecture was even more impressive. Flowing lines combined with mathematical precision, materials that had withstood thousands of years with minimal degradation. Incredible engineering, murmured one of the coalition engineers. These buildings were designed to last millennia without maintenance. Aisha led the way with the confidence of recognition, though she had never been to this world before. This would have been a central administrative hub, she explained, guiding them through massive doorways into the interior. The arcs carried standardized designs to be implemented on any world they settled. Inside, they found spaces that echoed with emptiness. Vast atriums, transportation corridors, habitation compartments, all meticulously constructed but devoid of occupants or personal belongings. It was as if the entire population had simply left at IN what appeared to be a central command center. They finally found what they were looking for, an intact data storage system, its power supplied by what Aisha identified as a microfusion reactor, still functioning after all this time. Their energy technology was more advanced than we realized, Dr. Lon commented as he helped Aisha interface with the system. Necessity, she repeated her earlier explanation. Earth's resources were depleted. We had to develop alternative energy sources or face extinction centuries before the climate collapse. The data system activated, responding to Aisha's commands. The information was vast, centuries of records, scientific data, population statistics, and more. She navigated through it with growing astonishment. They established a successful colony, she reported, her voice thick with emotion. Nearly 3 billion people by the time the last records were made. They terraformed the harsher regions, established a sustainable civilization, developed new technologies. And then, Thellius prompted gently when she fell silent. Aisha looked up from the display, her eyes wide with wonder. They left, voluntarily, about 8,000 years ago, according to these records. They built a new generation of ships, more advanced than the original arcs, and departed en masse. What? Vorix asked, his military mind immediately suspicious. What threat could drive an entire civilization to abandon a successful colony? Not a threat, Aisha replied, continuing to read. An opportunity. They detected signals from another civilization, one far more advanced than their own. And they went to investigate. She navigated deeper into the records, finding the final entries made by the colony's leadership. As she translated, her voice grew stronger, filled with unmistakable pride. The decision is made. The unknown calls to us, as it always has. We have built and remade this world, turned it from hostile to home, created a civilization that could sustain us for millennia to come. We could remain here, content and secure. But that is not our way. It has never been our way. The stars still beckon. The questions still demand answers. We go forward, not from necessity this time, but from choice. The choice to explore, to discover, to connect with others who share this vast cosmos. If you find these records, know this: humanity does not retreat. We advance. Silence fell across the command center as the words hung in the air. Then Thellius began to laugh, a deep, joyful sound that surprised even himself. What amuses you, your luminance? Vorix asked, perplexed. They did exactly what the story described, Thellius explained. Faced with the unknown, they chose to embrace it rather than fear it. Even after nearly losing their species, after successfully rebuilding, they chose exploration over security. That's humanity, Aisha said softly. For better or worse, we never could resist the call of the unknown. The coordinates, Dr. Lon interjected, examining another part of the data system. Do the records indicate where they went? Aisha returned to the system. Searching. Yes, they followed the signal to a star system approximately 300 light-years from here, outside what you now call coalition space in the direction of I believe you call it the Perseus Arm? Thelius immediately recognized the region. The Veil Nebula sector. It's been considered off-limits for centuries. Strange energy patterns, ships that enter rarely return. The Coalition Senate declared it a prohibited zone after multiple failed exploration attempts. Aisha looked at him intently. And you never investigated further? Never wondered what might be causing those phenomena? There are many mysteries in the galaxy, Dr. Washington. Vorax answered for the Emperor. Not all of them worth the lives required to solve them. Until now, Thellius said quietly. Until now, we had no compelling reason to push beyond those boundaries. But if humanity ventured there 8,000 years ago, we need to follow, Aisha finished. We need to find out what happened to them. Thellius nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the decision, but also the rightness of it. This was why he had been drawn to the human mystery for so long. Not merely to discover what had happened to them, but to understand the spirit that drove them. And now, perhaps, to recapture some of that spirit for the Coalition. We will need to return to Coalition space first, he decided, to prepare properly for such an expedition. The Everlight is not equipped for exploration of a potentially hostile region. Your luminance, Vorax protested. Your condition is terminal. Yes, Thellius cut him off. But I still have months, according to the physicians. Time enough to organize the expedition and perhaps see it launched, even if I may not live to see its conclusion. He turned to Aisha, whose expression showed she understood the implication of his words. If humanity still exists beyond the veil, Dr. Washington, the Coalition should meet them properly, with respect and diplomatic purpose, not merely as explorers blundering into their territory. And if they don't exist, she asked, if whatever they found there destroyed them, then we will know, finally, the fate of your species. And the Coalition will have learned something valuable about courage in the face of the unknown. The return journey to Coalition space took 3 weeks, during which Thellius's health noticeably declined. The medical nanites were struggling to maintain basic functions, and periods of weakness forced him to rest more frequently. Yet his determination never wavered. Upon their return, he called an extraordinary session of the Coalition Senate. Representatives from all 37 member species gathered in the great citadel that served as the seat of government. To this august assembly, he presented Aisha Washington, the last known human from Earth, and shared their discoveries. The revelation caused a sensation across Coalition space. Humanity, the mythical species known only from scattered artifacts and legends, had not died out after all. They had embarked on what might be the greatest migration in galactic history, seeking contact with another advanced civilization. Debate raged in the Senate. Many argued that the Veil Nebula should remain off-limits, that the risks were too great. Others, inspired by the human story, advocated for a major expedition to discover the truth. In the end, it was Thellius's final address to the Senate that turned the tide. Though physically weakened, supported by his exoskeleton and speaking in a voice that sometimes faltered, his words carried the weight of centuries of leadership and wisdom. For too long, he told them, the Coalition has expanded cautiously, consolidating rather than exploring, building inward rather than outward. We have created a remarkable civilization, peaceful, prosperous, diverse. But we have lost something essential along the way. The drive to push beyond our boundaries, to risk the unknown for the sake of discovery. He gestured to Aisha, who stood proudly beside him. From this single human, we have learned more about courage and determination than from 1,000 philosophical treatises. Her species, facing extinction, did not merely struggle to survive, they dared to thrive. And when given the choice between comfort and discovery, they chose discovery. Should we do any less? The expedition was approved by an overwhelming majority. A fleet of 5 vessels, including the newly refitted Everlight as flagship, would venture beyond the veil, seeking the humans who had vanished into that mysterious region 8 millennia ago. Thellius lived to see the fleet completed, but as the launch date approached, his condition deteriorated rapidly. The night before the scheduled departure, he summoned Aisha, Vorax, and Dr. Lon to his quarters aboard the Everlight. I will not be joining you tomorrow, he told them without preamble. The physicians give me days at most. The neural degradation has accelerated beyond the nanites' ability to compensate. Vorax, loyal to the end, stood at rigid attention, though his mandibles clicked in the pattern of deep sorrow. The expedition can be delayed, your luminance. It will not be delayed, Thellius said firmly. The Coalition Senate has appointed you, High Admiral Vorax, as Expedition Commander. You will lead in my stead. Vorax bowed deeply. I will be guided by your wisdom, sire, even in your absence. No, Thellius contradicted him gently. You will be guided by the spirit of exploration that this mission represents, by the courage to face the unknown. He turned to Aisha, and by the living representative of the species we seek. To Dr. Lon, he said, you will document everything, old friend. Whatever you find beyond the veil, whether humanity thriving, extinct, or transformed beyond recognition, it must be recorded for future generations. The avian scientist bobbed his head in solemn agreement. It has been the honor of my life to share in your quest, your luminance. Thellius settled back, his silver eyes dimming slightly as the exoskeleton compensated for another wave of weakness. I realized something as I studied the human records from the colony. Something about why I've been so drawn to their story all these years. What was that? Aisha asked softly. The coalition formed from necessity, species who realized that cooperation offered better chances for survival than conflict. We built a civilization based on mutual benefit and gradually expanding trust. It has served us well, brought peace and prosperity to thousands of worlds. He paused, gathering strength to continue. But humanity seems to have been driven by something more, something beyond mere survival or even prosperity. A need to reach further, to discover, to connect. Not from necessity, but from, what would you call it, Dr. Washington? Curiosity, she suggested. Wonder, the desire to know. Yes, Thellius agreed. Those qualities exist in all sentient species to some degree, but in humans, they appear to have been defining characteristics, fundamental rather than incidental. And that matters. Vorax asked. I believe it does, Thellius replied. The coalition has created stability, but stability alone is not enough for true flourishing. We need the drive to explore, to question, to reach beyond what is necessary to what is possible.